Good evening, all of you, and thank you for joining us today, and welcome to Moneylife Foundation. Today's session is of great importance because we are coming back after a long hiatus. We have started with our flagship seminars, the Safe and Smart series. Today, ma'am will be speaking on the various ways in which our savings normally vanish, the different traps into which we fall, and she'll also be speaking on the revised Financial Sector Development and Resolution Bill. I just wanted to introduce ma'am for a minute for the ones who don't know. Ma'am is a founder trustee of Moneylife Foundation, and she's been a journalist for the past 30 years, and she's done a lot of investigative journalism, and for her work she's been awarded the Padma Shri as well. So ma'am, can I request you to please take over?
Thanks, Arvind. Today's like a bit of an exam with all our banking counselors, all three of them being here. So I need to say something that they haven't heard, right? So I'm going to divide this into two parts. In fact, after we started working on the presentation, I realized that there should have been two separate presentations. One on the Financial Sector Development and Resolution Bill, because this has been reported exclusively by us so far. Nobody even has a copy of it. And it's got as serious implications as the FRDI bill, which was withdrawn in 2018. But before that, we want to talk about money traps, because that is our sort of flagship seminar, and I think there have been a lot of developments in the last 2 years which we haven't really covered in a seminar. So let me just jump straight into it and say, why is investing such a problem for most of us? Because it's quite simple that in spite of so many million years of evolution, the human mind is still not trained to assess financial risk. This may sound hard to believe, but when you see a snake or you see a tiger, the body automatically reacts. Okay, there is a flow of adrenaline. You know that you have to be fearful. You run. And it's a physical, biochemical reaction that happens automatically. Doesn't happen when you look at dangerous financial products that are going to decimate your savings. And this is the reason why people make mistakes about where to invest, how to invest, who to trust, because our mind plays tricks with us. So what is the first mistake we make? We tend to look at financial products the way we look at other physical consumer products. So you look at big brands and you think they're going to give you a better product. Doesn't happen in the financial world. You go to a foreign bank, you pay more, you may get a cappuccino and a nice setting, but it is just as likely to cheat you as a cooperative bank or a private bank. There is absolutely no difference in the brand names except the ambience and the environment and, how they treat you. Other than that, there's usually nothing. When you buy a consumer product, you can plug it in. You buy a toaster, you buy a washing machine, you know the instructions, you plug it, put it on, it starts. You know it's working. If it doesn't, you buy an AC, it doesn't work, you return it the next day. In all financial products, whether you've done the right thing or not is known after about a year. Okay? You buy a car, you test drive it. You go to buy anything else, you go to a mall, you may ask for a demonstration. There is no test drive and no demonstration in financial products. Even if you go by the slogan, mutual fund sahi hai, you get to know when a Reliance happens or, they say there's a standstill, Z is not able to pay, then you know whether sahi hai ki nahi. Till that time, you're unclear. This is the core difference between financial products and consumer products, but we tend to look at it, we tend to go by the same advertising, and we fall for ads. And I'm going to keep showing you how this happens throughout this presentation. So 5 fundamental things that you need to focus on. One is, this entire presentation is not meant for experts. Okay, this is meant for people like you and me who are doing another job. Okay, some of us may be doctors, lawyers, engineers, whatever. We are not financial experts pouring into financial products all the time. So you're doing a day job which is different. You've got money saved. You want it to be safe for your retirement, right? So the key thing that you have to focus on is don't lose money. So if you don't want to lose money, you have to look at safe products, which means that 0.5% more, 0.25% more, somebody coming to your office and saying it's a great investment, that woman is earning 20%, or some woman is selling you Hira gold, sell your flat. No. because that is not meant for people like you and me. We are looking at safe investments, safe products. All of us need some insurance, because insurance is to secure your future and inevitable contingencies that we don't know about. How you get there is quite simple. In fact, they talk about human life being dictated by two emotions, fear and greed. Both come into play when we are talking about financial products. In fact, they say greed is bad. Though if you watch the movie Wall Street, they'll tell you greed is good. Michael Douglas said that, but no, greed is bad when it comes to financial products. And in fact, fear is good. Be fearful, be paranoid, you're less likely to make mistakes. So if somebody comes and tells you something, avoid getting emotionally trapped, avoid falling for it, be skeptical, be worried, you're going to be a lot more careful. So when I talk about be fearful or skeptical, I'm going to just start with two examples as a bit of fun to say how extreme people can get, okay? And these are both stories from our neighborhood. They're right next door, both of them in Dadar. So there's this woman who's a doctor who took 25 lakhs and went to Lonavala because somebody told her that by putting a magic chemical on her currency notes, it would quadruple, okay? I mean, she's lucky to be alive and to file a police complaint after that. But what she was doing is fraudulent. She's still alive. It's lucky that they didn't sort of bump her off over there. People have been bumped for far less than this. But 25 lakhs, and she thought a chemical. So, people are gullible. This is a doctor. This is not an illiterate woman. And this is a story that's reported in the media. So it's not hearsay, gossip, we're not making it up. This was in the papers just 2-3 days ago. This is a wife of apparently a famous sound recordist. And I think it was just 3 days ago. She got cheated like about 6 times because she kept sharing her OTP for various things. And what did she share it for? Invariably greed. So somebody calls her up, says you'll get some reward points, you're going to get some travel package with a big discount. She likes it, she goes and pays it. Every single time, the standard, not once, twice, not in one day, over a few weeks, she repeatedly gave her OTP to fraudsters, and it was sucking out money from her account. It's only after that she has now finally gone and filed a complaint. This is extreme, if you ask me, okay? But it is happening. Educated people, both examples from this neighborhood, both are here in Dadar. And if you think this is not happening, I'm now coming to the less extreme ones where you won't believe how much of money is being lost. This is a 2016 seminar of CBI and vigilance agencies. They said that Indians across 26 states, 6 crore Indians had lost staggering 85,000 crore. If you ask me, it is far more than that, because this 2016 seminar is probably talking about numbers that ended in 2014. It is significantly more, it may be even double of that. What do they lose money in? It's invariably Ponzi schemes, multi-level marketing schemes, somebody who says you're going to get a higher return, somebody in your office who says 3 mahine mein double hoga, or Hira Gold was one example I talked about, but look at some of these others, okay? So simple provision that you have to look at. If a bank pays a certain amount as an FD, look at the highest return that you're getting on a bank FD. If it is 3 to 4% higher than that, you need to worry, because you have to ask yourself, why will anyone in business pay a higher return if they can get your money at a lower price? So the minute they are paying a higher return, it means that there is something that you have to worry about, not them. They're getting your money. If they're going to pay more, it means that there is a risk, there is a chance that your money is not going to come back. And Indians fall all the time for these pyramid schemes which say, introduce 2 people, right hand, left hand, you're going to get so much money. Each time you bring more people into the scheme, not only are you getting money, but those people are going to get 2 more, and then you're going to get money. Every one of these is one thing is certain, they fail. Whether they fail in 6 months, whether they'll fail in 10 years, whether they've gone global and they last for much longer, we don't know. I think, in fact, Mr. Tahir here was the first to come and tell me about Hira Gold. And I remember our discussion, and we kept saying, we don't know when it's going to fail. But it is going to fail. And the only guarantee that we can't give is when it will happen. It happened, right? That was not the only one. Even the lookalike schemes of Hira Gold failed. So we can't say when, but these are going to fail. So here's one example. City Limousine. This was, I think, 2001 or 2. He was paying a return of over 100% for 3 years before he stopped paying. Used to go around with Shah Rukh Khan and Dilip Kumar. He used to be on page 3 of the papers every day. And at the end of the day, these are 10,000 people sitting and asking the police for their money. It has still not come. Okay, I'm going to quickly run through these because you don't need to know the details. What you need to know is the size of the schemes and the number of people that are cheated. So pearls, I mean, even today SEBI is looking at it, 5,000 rupees is going to be paid, okay, per person. 49,000 crore is what finally, after the Supreme Court case, is what they're talking about. This does not include interest. Gold Quest, people like Michael Ferreira have been pushing it. We've said 5,000 crore. I think the number is significantly higher now. But that scheme continues. It hasn't stopped. Every one of you know about Sharda. Only 10,000 rupees is returned. There were so many politicians involved. All of them are scot-free. Some of them have jumped parties. It raised anywhere between 20 to 30,000 crore. Look at the numbers I'm talking about. I'm not even saying 1,000 crore, which is big. We're talking about 20 to 30,000 crore. And the money has not been returned. These were the poorest people. This wasn't even a Ponzi. They just offered 3-4% more than what the bank was giving. And people were putting their money in there because they looked at newspapers. They looked at the fact that these guys were forever with the chief minister and, you know, they were members of this leading party. Rose Valley, same. In fact, at one time in West Bengal, there were about 20 of these schemes. This man was in parliament, the guy who floated it. He was a Rajya Sabha member of the Trinamool party. The government has now come up with this new act. So you had a pyramid schemes and price chits act, which didn't quite work, because what happens in all these schemes is that you keep getting a high return initially, right? So you're satisfied, you're not complaining. Even after the return stops for a long time, they will continue to fool you by saying, all right, just wait, you're getting the money. And since it is so much higher, you wait. By the time you're ready to complain, it is too late. And the police can act only when there is a complaint. And usually when there is a complaint, it's too late. So now there is a central act that has been promulgated. We have not, it basically does two things. One is it criminalizes the floating of schemes which are not regulated. So everything has to be regulated. They cannot do promotions and advertising. Anything that's not specifically cleared under the law will be banned. Now, the advantage of this act is that there will be no advertisements. I don't know if you all remember Speak Asia, but they hired the biggest ad agency called Lintas. They had half-page ads. That kind of thing will not happen. But all of you know, I mean, some of these guys don't have to advertise. They don't have to take a half-page ad, because the minute they're offering higher returns, it's all word of mouth. It's in your housing society. It's in your Bishi circuit. It's in your office. It just spreads like wildfire, because they say somebody has invested and they're getting high returns. So that there is an act is good. The efficacy of the act we still have to see, because we've not seen a single case that has been tried against it. So where do you invest, right? We say as a rule, at least make sure that these are regulated by government regulators. So in the financial sector, we have 4 main regulators that we need to worry about. One is the RBI for banks and finance companies. Then there's the insurance regulator. There's SEBI for market-related issues. And there is PFRDI. So There's no guarantee that the regulator is doing his job, because the lack of regulatory accountability is another different ballgame in India altogether. We're going to talk about it. But at least if it's regulated, the pressure is on the regulator to, go after the person who scammed you, to try and recover the money, to set up a committee. So like we said, Pearls has a committee which was being set up under a former Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. I don't know when it will work, but there is no escape from being careful. Okay, it's your money, you have to be careful. It's relatively safer if there is a regulator who's asked for some kind of registration, disclosure, somebody has gone through the document that is ultimately being sold to you, and it's got a once over. So it's safer than the kind of schemes that we're talking about. Pension. So where do we put our money first? It's usually in a bank, right? So the first place where our savings go is in a bank account. Earlier, when we used to do this seminar till 2016-17, it was quite simple. We had only the first three to talk about. I used to say Sarkari banks, more than 45% of Indian banking is government-owned nationalized banks. So we are very lucky. It's safe, nothing to worry about. The bank's net worth may be fully eroded, but your deposits are safe. That continues even today, but you have this FRDS Act and FRDI Act which is coming. So whether that situation will hold or not, we don't know. But so far, public sector banks, nationalized banks are safe. Private banks, again, we used to say large private banks are safe. Okay, if it's a large bank, the global lesson after 2008, when we had a global financial crisis, was that too big to fail, so the government bails it out. They don't allow it to collapse because it leads to systemic issues. Now, India has done something different. We had a systemically important institution like infrastructure leasing and financial services having failed. It's caused a lot of pain throughout the system, but we did not bail it out. We have let it collapse. We are not even able to resolve it. We now have Yes Bank, which is doddering. It's the fourth largest private bank. So if number 4 is also insecure, we don't know what's going to happen. So far, the Reserve Bank of India has said there's no need for a bailout. It's watching. Yes Bank is putting out disclosures every few days saying they're looking for investors. They're not able to get any decent investor. Every few days, a director is resigning. Just 4 days ago, one more director resigned and he asked for a forensic audit of the bank. We don't know where it's headed, but this is going to be your big test case on private banks. So are private banks safe? We keep looking at the numbers, but if there is a fraud, we don't know about it. But I would say relatively, at least larger private banks are safe. Don't go for the smaller ones. The third is cooperative banks. This we have always said are dangerous. They fail at the rate of one bank a month somewhere in the country. Okay? These statistics are there on the Reserve Bank of India website. We're not making it up. And we've told people that if it was my money, I would not keep more than 1 lakh, because 1 lakh per depositor is insured. Okay? Yet there are people who have attended my seminars here. They come and tell me after PMC Bank failed that, ma'am, we came here, we've heard it, but we didn't withdraw our money from PMC Bank. And one of them has 10 lakhs over there, right? So people don't listen, unfortunately. So cooperative banks is not something where I would put my money. Or there are, again, here also there are exceptions. There are 4 big cooperative banks which are fairly safe. I mean, no casting aspersions on them. They are really good banks. They ought to be like scheduled banks. But by and large, please don't go with any unknown name which is in your neighborhood, because they fail with enormous regularity. Payment banks is something new that the government started a few years ago. It has no business model and they're all slowly folding up. I'll come to it later. Small finance banks, 11 of them have been cleared by the government. This is again a new set of banks. There are 2 things here. They are small, they are new. Good thing is they're regulated by the RBI. Does the RBI do a good job of regulating it? Well, you know what they've done with PMC and Yes Bank and others. So that's a question mark. Again, if it were my money, I would go easy with how much I put over there. There are people who write to us every few days to say, are these small finance banks good? Yes, when everything is new, they look very good. Okay. They are looking at underserved populations, which means it's a little risky to start with. In the initial days, everything usually works very well. So we don't know how we have to watch it. There's a whole lot of other stuff that's happening, which is again 2-3 years old. One is e-wallets. I mean, if you notice, everybody has a wallet, whether it is Big Basket, whether it's Ola, Uber, Amazon. Everybody wants you to, put money in the wallet and use it from there. Now, the wallet is not a standalone thing. The wallet has to be funded through your, debit card, your bank account being linked. That is where things become dangerous. Because first of all, every one of them persuades you, pushes you, gives you freebies to download an app. We find that most apps take so much of your data. They have no business looking at some of the things you do, but they're just automatically downloading it from your phone. The minute you link your bank account to it, you open yourself up to a bit of danger. Now, you'll find a lot of people saying that, people like you are skeptical, you are old school. All the techies think that life is so cool. They don't even want an OTP. They don't want, two-factor authentication. They think the minute they look at something and click on it, there should be a sale. But what we do at Moneylife, what we have done for the last 10 years, is to help people when there's a problem. And believe me, when you are that victim, the system doesn't work. None of the regulators work. India's grievance redress is so pathetic that when I look at the problems that people go through and they think we are going to help them, I'm so certain that I don't take any risks with my money. So I'm very, very careful about wallets. If I use a credit card to fund a wallet, I make sure that it does not remain linked. If there are some who automatically link it without asking your permission, then you have to go through some contortions like writing to their helpline and saying, I want to change the card, I'm going to put a new card. So if they think you're going to put another card, they give you the process to do it. But please do not keep things linked. It may make life easy, but when something goes wrong, resolving it becomes really, really difficult. P2P is something I'm going to explain in a bit. This is person-to-person lending. This is again a new business that has been started. I've already talked about payment banks and small banks, so I'm not going to go into it again. P2P I'll come to later. This is Unified Payments Interface. Again, everybody tells you that this is India's 8th wonder of the world, our creation. They have got somebody to go and tell the US, why don't all of us adopt it? And on the face of it, UPI works well, okay? So it's got a process where, you create a virtual address, but your bank account is linked behind. Those of you who read newspapers very carefully will notice that every other day, there is somebody being cheated by UPI. Because what does UPI do? It doesn't do just a push transaction. It's not that you use UPI to pay for something. Somebody else can also pull money out of your bank account by taking you for a ride. So the most common thing which you would have seen in the papers repeatedly is sites like, OLX and those kind of sales sites. So you want to sell a second-hand bike or a car or something small. There'll be somebody who is tracking those. They call you up and say, "Humko kharidna hai." Now suppose you're selling a second-hand bike, just as a way of example. You want to sell it for 5,000 rupees. Its real value is 4,000, but you think nobody's going to pay. They'll come and haggle, so I'm keeping a little buffer. You get a call to say, I want to buy the bike. I've seen the photo, looks very good. I don't want to haggle. I'm paying you the money. I'll come and collect it later. I'm paying you the money right now on UPI. Will you share your address with me? So you allow them to so they say, I'll do a test and I will put 5 rupees into your account. Let's see if this works. I'll pay the remaining money. So the 5 rupee transaction goes through well. You are absolutely thrilled because you're getting a bigger price. The guy doesn't want to come and see it. You don't need any more buyers. So you say yes. The second one, he says, okay, now I'm sending you the remaining, 3,000 plus. And they'll send you a link. And that, when you click that link, because your mind, I keep saying the mind plays games. If you are the really careful type, you will read the fine print and say, is he sending it or is he asking it now that he's connected? Most people don't, because we have this trust factor. He's paid me 5 rupees. Now why won't he pay me 3,000, 20,000, whatever it is he's promised? So we don't look and we click, the money's gone. This doesn't happen once or twice, it happens repeatedly. I told you about that lady in Dadar 6 times. Okay, so we think UPI is dangerous because we don't think that there should be a two-way element where money can be sucked out of your account. We would be far happier with UPI if it worked one way, where you use it to make payments. That's good enough. But that somebody can pull money out of your account is something that we find dangerous. We can discuss this later in the Q&A if you all have questions, and my colleague Yogesh is an expert on this, so we will look at it. Now I'm going to come to cooperative banks because we've had this big failure over here of PMC Bank, the kind of problems there were. It's not the only one. Like I said, they keep failing. You have City Cooperative Bank, which is under a moratorium. You've got this Bangalore Bank day before yesterday where they have restricted it to 35,000 per person. I'm going to come to the changes that are happening. So cooperative banks are under dual regulation. Why are they a problem? Only because of this, that RBI doesn't regulate them altogether. They are under the Registrar of Cooperative Societies. The Registrar of Cooperative Societies and the whole cooperative sector is completely politicized. So every single bank has some politicians, political parties, members of parliament heading it, being the chairman, getting elected, which means that RBI doesn't look at it closely. Even when there is a problem, it keeps getting buried for years together. The second thing they do is they place this kind of moratorium on the bank. You can withdraw a small amount of money and it remains, I call it a zombie state, where the bank is not allowed to do business. You cannot withdraw your money. In fact, with that City Cooperative Bank, the amount of withdrawal today is still only 1,000 rupees. So PMC Bank, because the numbers were bigger and people stood and protested, it's gone up to 50,000. Okay, in City it's still 1,000. Now, it remains like this for sometimes 6 years, 7 years, 8 years. While it is in this state, the bank is earning no money because it's not allowed to do business. And it is continuing to survive. It's not dead. So its employees are there. The employees keep getting salaries. Where does that money come from? The cost of administration is your deposits. So the deposits are being sort of sucked up to keep the bank running. In a case like PMC Bank, the cost of keeping it alive with its 120 branches is 1 crore a day. Okay, so it's already so many months. Just count the cost. So we've been going to the RBI, we've made a representation and said, why don't you at least work at finding a revival and a takeover? For various reasons, the RBI doesn't want to do it. One is, RBI is not in a hurry. They've got their own administrator sitting there. He's got a post-retirement job. The money is going from the depositor's account. And by the time, say a year or two later, if they tell the depositors you'll get half your money, people will be so happy at least to get that half that nobody's going to complain, right? So the RBI doesn't care. They're saying we're waiting to pass an act which will bring cooperative banks under single regulation of RBI. Whether that happens, whether it goes through, what happens when it goes into parliament, we don't know, because remember, every cooperative bank is controlled by political entities. We have to wait and watch what happens there. Now, this new form of lending, I don't know how, has anyone in this room got overtures saying, ye P2P lending bahut acha hai, you'll get 13%, 17%. Anyone here?
Yes.
You have? Nobody else? You too. Okay. Because we get, I mean, as Moneylife, they want us to be influencers to push people, to go into P2P lending. What it means is that people who otherwise don't have access to the banking system can borrow from an individual. So suppose, Mr. Tahir here has 50 lakhs for them. They're telling him that, what are you getting in a bank? 7%? So instead you'll get 13% if you lend directly to me. Because I'm not getting money from a bank, I'm ready to pay a higher interest, and this P2P company will act as an intermediary. So what are the checks and balances? They'll tell you it is regulated by the RBI. I keep repeatedly saying we don't know what that means because the RBI is repeatedly caught napping. Second, it says when it started, the RBI said, if even suppose there are 10 intermediaries offering P2P, the sum total that can be invested by an individual, him for instance, like I said, he has 50 lakhs, but he can't invest more than 10 lakhs through 5 P2P companies. So that's a ceiling, a check. What has happened is, then he says, how do I know that the person will repay? So they tell you, we are going to create categories of investors, the little safer ones, the little more dangerous. So the safer ones will give you a return of only 13%. Little more risky will give you 15. High risk, if you take a chance, we have vetted them, but they'll pay you 17%. Now, I keep saying, people who are going to invest here, this is not their full-time job. They are not the police, they are not detectives, they are not going to go and check who that person is, whether he's capable of, repaying. So you're going to ultimately look at documents that are submitted to you by P2P and make a decision. Whether that person is really low risk or he's high risk or he's borrowed from 20 people is not something that you know. But when you ask these questions, they'll say, no, but it's regulated by RBI. Again, there is no meaning. We are extremely wary about this. We were wary about it when it was at 10 lakhs. The business has hardly started. I mean, most of you don't even know about it. The industry has already lobbied and said, make it 50 lakhs, and now they're lobbying for 1 crore. So this, according to me, is going to be a microfinance-like scenario where you talk about it being 50 lakhs, but we'll never know. When bank interest rates go down, the reason I'm spending so much time on this is these are the kind of things that you're going to get tempted with. People have lost enormous amounts of money in FDs of companies. FDs are more or less stopped. This is something you're going to be tempted with because they'll say the returns are high. It is full of dangers, and this is especially important to people who are senior citizens, who are living on their savings, and they say, "Arey, bank mein interest nahi milta hai, to kahan lagaye paisa?" It doesn't beat inflation. But don't risk your capital. Just for that 3-4% more, you lose chunks of your principal, which is far worse. So I've talked about who's going to monitor. I've discussed all of this. So a few things about bank accounts. The reason why I've included this is that I find people don't know. Most people don't know that unclaimed deposits, if you haven't used your bank account for 10 years, it gets frozen, okay? It's called an unclaimed deposit, and there's a whole process. There are lots of people who come here and say, "Haan, mera account pada hai." In earlier days, lots of people used to have multiple bank accounts. We don't recommend having more than 4 or 5 because increasingly RBI is making it difficult for you, okay? You have to keep resubmitting KYC documents everywhere. So 10 years, your account, then you have to resubmit KYC. It takes, so you need money urgently. It's your own money. It's there in your account. It's your savings, but they make it tough for you to withdraw it. And in fact, after 10 years, they pass it on to the Depositor Education and Awareness Fund. Details are there on the bank website. Sometimes, and this was a new discovery for me, a lot of people don't like to say, and these are people in joint families, they don't like to say that they have some bank accounts. Something happens to them suddenly, nobody even in the family knows that they had a bank account. So it's sometimes worth your while to go and check the bank websites and see if you are an heir and you ought to have got it, you don't know about accounts, but details are there. The other thing that people don't know is if you haven't used your account for more than 2 years and you don't have money coming into it, and this does not include interest on savings because interest on savings deposit is automatic. Everything else, if you don't have an FD or some dividend linked to it, where then it's considered a customer transaction, then it is considered dormant and inoperative. Now, the reason why RBI does it, they say, is for your own safety. Everything that makes life difficult for you is actually for your own good. So they say this is to avoid that account being misused. But you need to remember that it's not that you have a bank account and you don't pay attention to it, it's lying there, and suddenly you want to go and use it. We had a watchman in this building who had an account lying. He hadn't gone home to Uttar Pradesh for 3-4 years. One fine day he goes there, he can't access his own money. I mean, poor chap had to go back to UP without taking the money which was lying in the account, because he had to resubmit his KYC. We moved heaven and earth for 3 days to try and get him the money, but even we failed, right? So it's difficult, and you ought to know this. Reviving the accounts, you need to offer an explanation for why you haven't used it. You have to fill an application, resubmit your KYC documents. Luckily, at least they're not charging you to do this, because otherwise banks are charging you for everything. Relationship managers is something that we talk about all the time. We talk about banks being safe, but the thing that you must remember is the bank is likely to cheat you more than anybody else, and it's usually done through the relationship manager, who's coming there all the time to tell you that, okay, you have money in this bank, but you would be better off taking the money out and putting it somewhere else. So put it in a housing finance company, you will get 1 rupee more. Put it in a ULIP, put it in insurance, put it anywhere but keep it here. It sounds weird, isn't it? But banks earn more money by pushing you there. So they are sitting there and employing relationship managers, not to create a relationship, not to make life easy for you, but to enhance their income. HDFC Bank is our most profitable bank. Biggest chunk of money it earns is through these kind of other income and fees. We have our next door neighbor, which is a specialized subsidiary which got listed at a huge premium. So we say invest in HDFC, the bank. But if you're banking with HDFC, be careful about how you listen to the relationship manager and what do you do. So they're selling you credit cards, constantly selling you stuff, and they don't hesitate to make false commitments. In fact, we keep saying take it in writing. One of the key lessons we tell everyone is somebody tells you something which is not there, you must look at documents, ideally, okay? Many of us don't. But at least make them put their promises in writing on an email. When they are reluctant to do it and they keep saying, "Main hu na," you've heard that slogan also, that's not good enough when it is verbal. It has to be in writing, because anything in writing is something you can use to fight with them. So you go to the banking ombudsman, you can demand a compensation, you can go to a consumer court, but it's not good enough to say "Main hu na." It has to be in writing, and you have to ask for this. I don't blame the relationship managers. They're just doing a job. They have such stiff targets. They fail to meet targets for 3 months, they're out of a job, right? So I keep saying that when they approach you, they don't even see a human being there. They see a target, right? And they have to extract a certain amount from that target. So no point in blaming them. They're doing a job. This is not how banking should be. We inherit everything from the US. These bad practices also have come from there. And all banks, including our public sector banks, are earning a lot of money. And we call it institutionalized loot. In fact, this is a story, I'm not going to get into details, but all of you know about Suchitra Krishnamurthy. 1.8 crore is what she was cheated of through, believe it or not, falsely promising her 24% return, making her take a home loan that she didn't need, telling her that she will earn enough on ULIPs to pay the EMI on the home loan, which was false, churning her mutual fund portfolio to create a loss. After really fighting for 2 years, we managed to get her 1.37 crore back with a gag order that she can't talk about it. But remember, this 1.37 crore is much less than what she has lost. No interest, no compensation. But she was grateful that she at least got this back. This is done by HSBC. So we say that what's going on with banks today is organized loot. I come to credit cards because when we run helplines, this is one section where we again have maximum number of complaints. How many of you think we should have a credit card? And I put in a quote which sort of again frames your mind. Dilbert says credit cards are the crack cocaine of the financial world. How many agree? You agree? So how many don't have a credit card?
I don't.
Wow, really?
I don't.
You're not earning enough, maybe. So,
Because I'm a Moneylife.
no, but you know what? I think you must have a credit card because there are certain situations in which nothing works but a credit card. You may have the money in your bank account, but I keep saying, you're taking a Kingfisher flight and suddenly there is no airline. It just stopped. What do? You've gone out of town. You can't run to a neighbor or to someone else. You can't go and access your bank account. You're just stranded, right? So there are certain situations, certain emergencies, maybe hospitalization, where a credit card is useful. So I'm not knocking credit cards at all. Only thing is, look at it like it's crack cocaine, right? So which means that you have to be really careful about how you use it. So this is what you need to know. The returns, the interest and charges on credit cards are not 18% as they claim. They are anywhere between 40 to 65%. So credit cards do not like or do not want people who pay the full amount when the bill comes in. Okay, we are completely, I think somebody complained that the managing director of a bank said, we don't want useless people like that. So all of us who pay on time, we are useless people as far as they're concerned. In fact, they don't even earn the money of the cost of the card in the monthly statements because you're paying them back and they're giving you credit, right? But if you have a credit card, make sure you pay back, otherwise this is the interest. Now, if you roll over, because you notice the first line in bold is, you need to pay only 375 when you have actually spent something like 20,000. Because they want you to do that. They want you to roll over the rest because they can't earn that 40 to 65% unless you roll over. Now, once you roll over, everyone says that, I use it well because I have this free period. You do not have a free period if you have an outstanding. If you have an outstanding, everything stops. You have that credit period only when there is zero outstanding. If you withdraw cash, they encourage you to withdraw cash, that is treated like an instant loan and it starts carrying a high interest charge from the day you withdraw. It doesn't have your 20-day, 30-day. Even this 20 days is a misnomer. Half the people don't know that. It depends on where in your billing cycle have you done the spending. So suppose your billing cycle starts from the first of the month and you've spent money on the second, then you have a credit period which is whatever 30, 40, 45 days, 60 days sometimes, depending on which credit card you're using. But if you have spent that money on the 20th day or the 25th day, you have 5 days in which to pay it. So don't think that you can pay and you have that much time. I mean, it's silly to explain this, but you'd be surprised how many people don't know it. If you have withdrawn cash, that is adjusted the last. Okay, so if you have other outstanding, that's adjusted first. Now, why is it adjusted last? Quite simple. The business is meant for the credit card company to make money. As it is, they spend so much on useless people like us who are paying the whole amount in time, right? So they have to extract the money from the remaining lot. So when they have given you a loan which has no free period, they want to maximize their returns on it. So that's the nature of the business. Can't blame them. Those who take advantage of it and benefit from it once in a while, good for them. But remember, credit card is good as long as you know how to use it. Other common mistakes that people make is comparing a bank FD with a corporate FD. Completely different ballgame. Corporate FDs are unsecured. Today, after people have got cheated in a huge way, they have, in fact, Arvind was here as an intern, has done a study on how many people got cheated, Pletico Pharma and, Helios and Matheson. People have never got their money back, lakhs and lakhs of rupees. A lot of senior citizens who keep asking, company is gone, money is gone. Even after it goes into liquidation, as an unsecured fixed deposit holder, you're the last in the queue. Okay, so secured lenders, creditors get their money first, and by and large, let's take it for granted, you're not going to get your money once a company is failed. I told you that you need insurance. So you need certain kinds of insurance. Some of it, like your motor insurance, is mandatory. Life insurance, if you have dependents, it's a good idea to have it. When you stop having people depending on you, there's no point in having life insurance. So for certain times in your life, it's required. It's a good idea to have insurance for your home. But remember, you get a small amount. What you need to remember is that the insurance is very different from other investments that you make. Everywhere else, it is buyer beware, caveat tempter. You need to be wary. The insurance business, they are not too concerned. Some of them will say, okay, you want a medical insurance, we will insist on a health check. Some of them don't even want to do that because they're taking you on utmost good faith. The business is just inverted. It's quite simple. You're going to pay the insurance company. They don't need to ask you too many questions at the time when you're buying the insurance policy, right? They start looking at the fine print the day you make a claim. That's the day they will look at whether there's a spelling mistake, doesn't match your, KYC documents, the birth date is wrong, did you have hypertension and did not report it, did you have diabetes but decided that no, there are medical records, but no, I went to whatever Dikshit diet and my, diabetes was over, so I didn't feel the need to inform. All that comes into play at that time, right? So you have to be careful. Please do not believe agents who say you can lie, fudge, I will change, get it in your wife's name because you're beyond the age where you can get a certain policy. All this has happened. Okay, senior citizens are told to buy ULIPs and said that why don't you do this as succession planning? So they're sold one-time insurance with 20 lakhs and 30 lakhs of premium. In fact, a friend's grandfather, I helped the family recover 1 crore for the father and 1.8 crore for the father's brother, both above 80. They had taken these policies, 20 lakhs in one grandson's name, 30 lakhs the next year. Same guy was coming year after year and conning them, and they had no idea. He used to sit and chat with them for hours together, drink their tea, take them for a ride, get them to fill forms, and it's only later that they got to know that this man was targeting senior citizens. It was in Pune. When we took up the case, we realized that the bank knows very well what is happening. The reason why I could get them the money back so soon is obviously because we threatened to write about it. And we discovered that they told the person, don't tell her, we're not sharing any details. In one case, the person had even died. They didn't even wait for a death certificate, they gave the money back. Okay? I mean, it's as shocking as this. Why did they do this? Because they didn't want it publicized, because those two were not the only victims. There were about 200 victims in a locality in Pune, all senior citizens, all duped of their savings in a similar manner. So they wanted to settle individual cases that came without publicity. So the same person whom I helped at her wedding told me we got our money back, but did not have the courtesy to give it to us officially. That's how we know that the money has come back. And insurance misselling is egregious. This is a TC, retired TC, whom we had helped to get our money back. What was shocking over here is they'd even forged signatures. This is done by the insurance company. This is our cover story. It is Reliance Insurance. We have named it, and IRDA's only punishment was, to get them to sack some of the officers who were responsible for this. So misselling, even in regulated products, is as egregious as this. I'm not going to spend too much time on this except to tell you that many of us don't know that this Pradhanmantri Yojana, I don't think too many people in this room or anybody in this room will qualify for it. But all of us have people who are dependent on us. We have drivers, we have domestic help. Many of them also don't know, and I discovered this the hard way when somebody who works for me, her husband had an emergency problem. This is working quite well. Okay, it is giving insurance up to 5 lakhs. It is fully paid, including hospitalization, and medicines are paid by the government of India. If you have an orange or yellow ration card, by and large, your name is automatically on the list, and you can, at the moment it covers 8 crore families. They're hoping to cover 50 crores. But this is something that all of you should remember, because all of us have a duty in society. We have people that we need to educate and remember. So you can just help them to check or direct them to say it, including, things like open heart surgery and whatever, is available free to people today. I mean, in Bombay, they go to KM hospital, no questions asked, as long as they carry their, ration card, they're getting the treatment. Ration card and, a lot of times Aadhaar card. I started by saying fear is a good thing, right? When it comes to the financial markets. So let me tell you a few examples where being fearful is useful. So 5 really dangerous words tell me where to sign. None of us like to read detailed documents. We say, kahan sign karna hai? They turn the pages and we are busy signing. Even I'm guilty of doing that, okay, often enough. Because unfortunately, the regulators make it impossible for all of us to read. So we either have to trust or we have to look at things, but this is one of the most dangerous things to do. And it is especially dangerous when people say there is no responsibility. So when your husband takes a home loan and he's working and the wife is asked to sign, they said, no, this is just for a joint loan. There is no responsibility. It's not true. The wife is made responsible because if something happens, that house is repossessed and she is in effect signing all the documents to say that she is giving up her rights because she is a co-owner, co-borrower, not a co-owner. She may or may not be a co-owner, but she's definitely a co-borrower, which means that if something happens, they are going to be able to extract that money from you. Recently, there was a case with Kotak where this person finally went to court. His problem was that he stood a guarantee for someone. Things have changed today. When I took my first home loan, I needed 2 sureties. I needed to hypothecate my insurance policy to HDFC. So I used to say they take a 4-time security. And the market was such because, half the money had to be paid in black. So somebody who was lending to you, remember HDFC was the first home loan lender. So it was a big favor to you that you even got a loan. You'll have all heard that famous story about Narayan Murthy and his wife going to meet Deepak Parekh, and when they went to HDFC, did a namaskar and went in because they said their first house happened because HDFC existed and was giving a loan. Today, you don't need to be a guarantor and a surety to people. If you do it, because there are ways and means where people are able to get money without you standing guarantee. If you stand guarantee, be really careful who you're doing it for, because there are serious consequences, whether it's an education loan or whatever.
Just one second, I'm getting the mic. No, but
I would ideally like to take questions later, but unless you have something, I'll take 1 or 2 quickly.
About referencing. So if my friend is applying for a home loan and he's asking me to be a reference, not a guarantor. So giving reference, does that again entail any responsibility on me?
Not really, just as a reference, no, but look at what you're signing, because today I don't think many people are even asking for reference. So I don't know which of the lenders is still asking for a reference, but many of them are not even asking for it. I didn't have to, for my loans, didn't have to get any reference from anybody. So you have to find out why. If the person vanishes, they are going to come to you. So you're going to be the first stop at which they'll say, where did he come from? At that time, if you say, I don't know where he is, there may be consequences. I think, in fact, Mr. Tupe should be able to tell us if he gives himself as a reference, will he get away?
Right. Nowadays, no that.
It's not required, right? Yeah, so be careful, because you need to find out why is it which lender is asking for a reference. It's really not needed. Then pay attention to, like I said, OTPs, passwords, PINs. These are things, every time you get an email which is, pretending to be from the tax department, either giving you a refund or threatening action against you, or threatening to close your account. You just have to be careful. If you go and click on the name, you will see that the first thing says Income Tax Department, but when you click it, you will know that it's somebody else behind it. So this is an example of a loan that email that I've got looks absolutely like it's come from Ayushman Bharat. Similar ones come from RBI. Similar ones come from the tax department. In fact, the tax department ones are so well done that even when you click it, the difference between the actual income tax website and their email IDs and the fake one is so little. I think Yogesh has done a couple of articles about it, that it's difficult to figure out whether it's true or not. So when in doubt, don't click it at all. Just go and ask somebody. What you can be, rest assured is that you don't have to click on something because it may be a spam. Again, like I said, the government makes things difficult for us because now you've had the Bombay High Court saying that even notices can be served on WhatsApp, and if there's a double tick, it's going to be taken for granted that you read it. Okay. Similarly, some things are being sent to you on email, and if there is an acknowledgement that you have opened it, I guess you can be held responsible. But if there is a hyperlink there saying you want to reactivate your account, you want to prevent something, you want to know somebody giving you a refund which you aren't expecting and don't deserve, please don't click those links, because they take you to sites which either put in malware or access your data. Another huge area where people get cheated. I mean, this is so big that two companies, extremely popular on the stock markets, highly profitable, are running because all of us want to go and, the first time we need money, we don't look at the fact that I have a chain, I have a ring which I can go and sell and raise money. I want to go and take a loan against it. Because, like I said, the mind plays games. They will use an Akshay Kumar to frame things in a way that they make it seem as though it's all about, your mother's bangles, which is given for your education. They'll make it as though she wants the same bangles. I think she would rather that you 5 years later give her the latest that Deepika Padukone is wearing in a Titan ad, rather than those same old bangles that she pledged. So I think it's a load of rubbish. You have to not make the mistake between gold that you own, which is for a rainy day. I mean, gold is a wonderful investment to have, a saving to have, because you can wear it if you're a woman, and you can sell it when you're in trouble, right? It is something that definitely has value. What you need to avoid at any cost is to take a loan against that gold. You are in difficulty, sell the gold. So this is an article we've written in Moneylife, but I'm not going to get into details except because the numbers are a little old. But look at the illustrative chart. You take a gold loan, you're going to pay it back in 82 months. You sell the gold, and whatever EMI you're going to pay, you start buying back the gold a little bit at a time, maybe even 1 gram at a time. You're going to get that gold back in 39 months. It's as simple as that. And when you take a gold loan, you're not getting the full value, you're getting a haircut, right? So it's like a double whammy, and there are all kinds of charges attached to it, which is the, assaying charge, looking at whether your gold is all right or not. So it is in 3 minutes, but charges are debited from the gold. I keep harping on this because people, even in our office, we do financial literacy. We've had at least 4 occasions where somebody is in trouble and their first thought is, I'm going to get a gold loan. And you say, why? Because they don't do the numbers. Finally, why are we doing all of this? Because we are being tracked, right? Our credit history is so important. Every single thing that you do today, including, believe it or not, what you say and do even on Facebook and, Instagram, is being tracked. Not everything goes into your credit history, but it gets into, when you get into trouble, this is what they're going to look at. So credit information companies are tracking your borrowings, and they're giving you a rating, and that rating is reduced to a number. If that number is high, you get future loans. The way the system works all over is, if you have a good credit score, you get a lower interest. If you have a bad credit score, really bad, you don't get any loans at all. In the US, you get loans anyway, however bad it is, but you pay a very high interest. In India, you don't get loans. At the moment, that's how the system works. So if you have a default, you really are putting an end to your financial ability to get further loans. So what do they track? They track how much you owe. So what is the extent of your borrowing in relation to what you earn, right? They look at your payment history. So if you borrowed a long time ago and you have paid very diligently, no late payments, no delays, then that has a huge factor. The highest factor is your ability to pay over a period of time. So suppose you're a young person in a first job, have borrowed for a motorcycle, it's your first borrowing. So you get a credit score, but it may not be very high because you're a fresh borrower. You don't have a payment history. As you build the payment history, your credit score keeps increasing. So when you keep paying back regularly, that payment history factor kicks in. And so the length of credit history and the diligence with which you pay, both these together account for 50% of how your credit score is taken into account. And they have, each agency has a few different factors. That 10% is varies from company to company. There are 4 of them. They share data. All banks share data with them, and there is no escape from it. So when you fail to pay, all this kicks in, and you can't borrow again. You have any questions on this part? Because then I'm now going to the FRDS bill after this. So I'll take a few quick questions and then we'll go to the next section.
Wait for the mic.
Madam, in terms of investment, what will be the weakness of a product of, say, the Life Insurance Corporation of India and the 7.75% Government of India bonds? The weakness in terms of default of the principal as well as the interest or the bonus.
See, both are sovereign. LIC is still nationalized, right? Government of India bonds are sovereign bonds. So there's absolutely no risk of default. So LIC is doing dangerous things, but there is no escape from Government of India having to pay for it if something goes wrong. It is unheard of. Then it's like the country failing, right? So till now we've had no record. I know that after 2008, Iceland as a country, failed. But otherwise, there is nothing to worry about between the two as yet. We are worried where LIC is headed, because of the kind of investments it's making and it's forced to make, and it's sort of bailing out the government all the time. But I don't think you need to worry as yet.
It may affect the bonuses, no? The way LIC is...
yeah, it could. Behaving. It depends on LIC's numbers. Of course, it could affect. So, unless you tell me what product, I'm not going to be able to answer whether this or that is better. And in any case, under SEBI rules, I can't stand here and give you investment advice. I'm not allowed to.
No, I'm not asking you about investment advice. Just the failure of, just the probability of these two failing.
Failing won't happen. Failing cannot happen. But LIC has a lot of problems. Like we've been taking up the Jeevan Saral issue, where we think there was gross misselling and people have been filing consumer complaints. It was sold as an investment product with insurance cover, and what people have got back after 10 years is less than the principal. That we think is outright cheating. We even took them to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court said go back to the High Court, but people have got success in consumer courts. There are 2 other products of LIC which are similarly Jeevan Shanti, and one more which Jangir Guy told us. So there are individual products where there is a problem, but that's why I said you'll have to tell me which product, and then one can talk about it. Not generally as an institution failing. It's a government institution. You've seen what happened with public sector banks. When their net worth was fully eroded, also we didn't worry about our deposits. In fact, their deposits were increasing because the government then bails them out with our taxpayers' money.
Now, in some of the products like, say, taxable bonds recently issued by L&T or Tata Capital Housing Services, the rating given is AAA at the time of issue of these bonds. But they are long-term bonds, 7 years to 10 years. So then one has to constantly track.
You have to. There is no alternative to it. You have to track them, and you have to look for the fact that there is an exit on the market. Unfortunately, we don't have a proper debt market, so sometimes it's very illiquid. It's a risk that you have to take, but there's no alternative to tracking. Can we close it here? I can't have only...
Can I ask one question?
Okay.
Ma'am, you just touched on the credit cards and the necessity in an emergency like Kingfisher case that you said. Can that case be handled if by a debit card instead of a credit card?
You can if you have money in your bank. See, for a debit card, the difference is that you have to have that money. But suppose it's a student, or you have someone who's not on a very high salary, doesn't have that much of balance in a savings account, then the debit card is of no use.
Okay,
but a credit card will let you buy that ticket.
Good, thanks.
So we now come to this whole issue of bail-in. So I don't know how many of you remember, but in 2017, this bill was introduced in Parliament. It was called the FRDI Bill, Financial Resolution and Deposit Insurance Bill. And that's a time when every day the papers were full of bad loans of banks, which had gone up to 10 lakh crore. And there was real panic that even public sector banks may, if they fail, and the biggest losses were in public sector banks. So there was a serious worry that government would pass this bill and there would be a bail-in clause that kicks in. Now, what does bail-in mean? All over the world after the 2008 global crisis, where the US government and the Federal Reserve stepped in and bailed out a whole bunch of institutions, insurance companies, private banks. They said, no, this can't go on because we can't use taxpayers' money to bail out X or Y private entity. So they say that private entity should find a way to bail itself out. How is it going to do it? By taking depositors' money. At that time, the US government actually has made a profit on the money that they invested in these banks because they earned a higher return when the system was sort of saved by doing these bailouts. But the G20 met and said each one should have a new law which says that you will use depositors' money by converting it into equity, which will be used to recapitalize the bank so that the bank can continue to function. Now, banks need to have a certain amount of capital if they are allowed to borrow, have your deposits, and lend. So, capital adequacy is all about having that equity capital. So they said your deposits will be converted into equity. The minute they said this is going to happen in India, obviously all of us panicked. Because like I said, we used to say, Sarkari bank hai, you don't have to worry. The biggest losses were in Sarkari banks. The government did not bother to tell us, does this apply to everybody? Will it apply only to private banks? How can you have a national bill which will apply only to one section of banks? So there was complete panic. Government did not give any assurances, any details, except to say there's nothing to worry about. By August 2018, 1 year after the bill was introduced to the Lok Sabha, there was so much of chaos that they quietly withdrew it and they said, we will rework it and reintroduce it. Okay, so it was not going away. They just said, we're going to come back. They admitted there are some mistakes. Now, one of the couple of things that we found wrong at that time was that, you have cooperative banks which are not properly regulated. What happens? Do you do a bail-in? In fact, what is happening with PMC and others is a bail-in of sorts without asking you, because they're not giving your money back, right? What happened? I mean, this is the fact that they're under dual regulation is out of your control, but you have to bear the consequences. The same thing with public sector banks. We are not like the rest of the world. We have a nationalized banking system. So why do we need an FRDI bill at all was the question that many of us asked. But government had no answers. Like I said, 10 lakh crore was the losses. In just 5 years alone, bank losses have been so huge that 3 lakh crore has been pumped in by the government. I mean, think about it. You read about farmer suicides all the time, and every economist will say, don't waive farm loans. But about 200 large industrialists have walloped tens of thousands of crores from the Indian banking system. And who pays for it? Not just all of us who have bank accounts. Even the poorest man on the street who hasn't seen the inside of a bank. Because when the money goes straight from the exchequer, It is money that has to be used for development, for infrastructure, for providing you all the amenities that is going to these banks, and essentially to pay back industrialists who have looted it over a period of time, completely hand in glove with politicians. So our anger about the bill stems from the fact that we are paying for this loot without accountability. Now, this is, Moneylife alone has reported about this Financial Sector Development and Regulation Bill, because I have a copy of it from somewhere. It is marked secret all over. There's a 30-page secret note which is signed by Atanu Chakravarti, who's the Economic Affairs Secretary. And now, is it all bad? No, not at all. Do we need financial resolution? Yes, we do. Now, what do I mean by financial resolution? It means that if something goes wrong, you need to find a way to resolve it without it languishing in 50 courts with enforcement agencies saying, we have first claim. Look at PMC Bank as an example, okay? Income tax saying, no, they haven't paid tax, our claim comes first. Then some other creditor will say, we've got guarantees, we've got assurances, we've got an LC, we will come first. So every time there is a failure of a corporate house, there are 20 to 30 people who will file litigation, who will hire top lawyers, who will look at various ways in which different laws can be used to challenge things. Investigation agencies will also jump in. You'll have the economic offenses, you'll have enforcement, you'll have DRI saying they did something else, you'll have someone saying they did money laundering. There is no resolution. Okay, so it just languishes sometimes for 20 to 30 years, and look at ILFS. In 1 year, they have not made much headway in selling anything but one small set of wind energy assets. So you need a system which will talk about, like the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code. This is going to be meant for financial companies, banks, they say insurance companies, and anybody who is declared as systemically important, which means large NBFCs like Diwan Housing, ILFS, maybe even some stock exchanges and depositories may be included. It's going to cover a whole bunch of legislation, because the primacy will be to what is going to be called a resolution authority. So they're going to create a body which is called the resolution authority. Even the deposit insurance is going to be moved to that authority, and everything will be done through it like it is done under the bankruptcy code. So do we need it? They say there's a systemic vacuum. You're not able to solve financial problems. We all agree that you can't have things languishing. It has to be decided in a year or two. So this bill provides that it has to be resolved by the resolution authority in a period of 1 year. They know this 1 year is itself unrealistic, because the bankruptcy code said 270 days and it doesn't happen in 270 days. We know it goes on for longer than that. So here they've said 1 year plus 1 more year. And I guess that 1 year plus 1 has happened because it's already 15 months since ILFS's board was sacked last October, and they have managed to sell one set of small assets. In fact, ILFS is one of the reasons why they say we need a resolution authority. So are we against this bill? No, we are not. Some parts of the bill are good. They are needed. Some of the things that they're going to do is bring a lot of people, like ILFS, a holding company, will be under it. Now, let me talk about what is the problem. So there's a specialized mechanism to resolve it. So key features are these. It's fixing the holes in the current legislation. Each systemically important company is going to be graded into 5 different, it's like a heat map. So there'll be green, amber, and red, but divided into 5. The last 2 are imminent and critical. So when it is reaching a danger zone, the resolution authority steps in. In the first stage, it can stop them from doing business, put some curbs on it. In the second stage, sack the board, appoint a receiver, and do other things. So the resolution authority kicks in. The problem with them is, what they're saying in this secret note is that we've finally got rid of the bail-in provision. Okay? Unfortunately, it's a pack of lies, because this is what the note says. The much criticized bail-in provision has been removed, and instead the resolution authority will be empowered to cancel or modify liabilities subject to safeguards. The insured deposits will not be cancelled or modified. Okay. Now let's analyze what this means. First of all, insured deposits would not be cancelled or modified is big deal. This is how it is all over the world. Okay. So all over the world, they have said a minimum threshold of deposits which are covered by deposit insurance will not be touched. It was the same in the previous bill. It will be the same here. They say they are going to increase it, but it's the same. So there's no difference. Now they say the resolution authority can cancel or modify liabilities. What is a liability? Your deposit is a liability. Okay, so the bank has a liability to repay your deposit. So they say they can cancel it, which means they can cancel the liability to repay you. It's the same as bail-in. They can modify it, which means that they can convert your deposit into equity, which means it's the same as the bail-in provision that we were worried about. They're just being too clever by half and wording it differently and trying to say that it has been removed. I mean, we get really tired of the fact that everything is always a lie and it's fudging of facts, and they think that all of us are morons and we don't understand it. So this is part one. Okay. The other thing that the note says, and this note is important because this is what is going to go to the cabinet, and this is the basis on which this bill is probably going to be introduced in Parliament. So they say simultaneously a decision to increase deposit insurance from 1 lakh to a higher amount may be taken, and that increased amount would be the floor for deposit insurance. The resolution authority will have the power to modify this deposit insurance limit. Now, this is so crazy. This entire paragraph is just mind-boggling in how weird it is. Now, for the first reason is that deposit insurance, any insurance, is an actuarial science. Okay, based on the law of probability, based on demands, based on the premium collected, and all of it is done by high level of mathematics to come to a decision on how much of premium should be collected for what amount of liability, and you all know this, right? So if I decide that I want a 1 crore life insurance, depending on, because I want 1 crore, I'll be paying a certain amount of premium, which is calculated based on my age, based on my maybe health profile or whatever. So there is a science behind it, and it is decided without even telling us whether 1 lakh will become 2 lakhs, 5 lakhs, or as some media houses are speculating, 15 lakhs. There's a bland line like this saying it may be increased. We have to know how much, because everything else, including the safety of your deposits, the cost of your deposit, depends on how much that is and what is it that you're going to pay. So it's impossible to have it as vague as this, and they will have the power to modify this. This is so alarming because, you can't, like I said, it's an actuarial science. You can't decide that, oh, PMC Bank, oh my God, they are very politically powerful, so inko 10 lakh dete hain. So you guys are City Cooperative Bank, so small number of people affected, unko rone do, we'll give them 5 lakhs. Can this be done? It has to be standard because the premium is going to be collected on that basis, right? So how does a line like this even make sense? We don't know. There are no explanations. This government doesn't believe in explanations. So look at the picture, okay? Now, the largest number of banks in the Indian banking system are cooperative banks, shocking as it may seem, because all of us look at public sector banks with thousands and thousands of branches, or we look at an ICICI and Axis Bank because they have so many branches. We think they are, in number it is one bank, right? So the largest number of banks are cooperative banks at 1949. They used to be over 2,100. Like I say, they keep failing at the rate of 1 a month, so it's come down. Plus 56 regional rural banks and 3 local area banks. Why is this number important? Because when you pay a deposit insurance, it's all clubbed together. These are the risky banks. The numbers are more. In the last 25, 30 or 50 years, they go back to 1961 incidentally, because they want to bring Nehru in the picture, right? So this government goes back all the time to 1961, not even the year of bank nationalization. So In all these years, the banks that have failed the most are these cooperative banks, right? And they say cooperative banks will pay risk-based premium. Now, if they are more risky and they pay risk-based premium, that means they're going to pay a much higher premium. So even on the 1 lakh which is insured today, their premium should be significantly higher. If it is 5 lakhs, which is 5 times, and it's risk-based, can you imagine how high the premium would be for these banks? Now, can they afford it? Most of them are doddering. Can they even afford to pay the premium? We don't know. Now, what we would have liked when this bill is done is to do an exercise saying we will increase deposit insurance from, say, 1 lakh to 5 lakh. This will mean risk-based premium of cooperative banks depending on the size. So maybe a Saraswat bank would pay very little, somebody else would pay more. Do a calculation and tell us what it means. Is it viable? A former chairman of a PSU bank tells me that it is completely unviable for 2 reasons. First of all, today deposit insurance works well because they collect insurance from everybody based on the total number of deposits. So look at it. You may have, 50 lakhs or a crore in your bank account. If something goes wrong, they're going to give you 1 lakh. But the premium is collected on your behalf on the whole 1 crore. But their liability is only 1 lakh. Right? So this is how they're going to collect it from everyone. So they're sitting on, the Deposit Insurance Guarantee Corporation is sitting on 91,000 crore. It's very comfortable because PSU banks don't fail, they're Sarkari banks. They don't ever have to pay for them. Private banks have not failed. Only in the last 25 years since economic liberalization, we've had 2 examples. One was Global Trust Bank, which was force merged with Oriental Bank of Commerce. The second was United Western Bank. Now, if this is done, I'm going to come up with some numbers. But the amounts involved will be huge if bailouts have to happen. They have not happened because you have a PSU banking system. You hold a gun to their head, you say merge, you make some bank take responsibility. That cannot continue with this bill, right? So will that continue or not? What will be the status of PSU banks? What is going to be the status of cooperative banks? Why do we put our money in cooperative banks? Most people will tell you because they give you 1 to 2% more interest, isn't it? If they're going to pay much more for deposit insurance, they will not be able to give you that higher interest. If they're not going to give you higher interest, you will not put your money there. If you don't put your money there, that business model fails, right? So maybe the number of banks will cease to exist. RBI is now telling them convert into small finance banks first and then grow into scheduled banks. But it's a process. Only one bank has just agreed to become a small finance bank, but the law will come first. So when the law comes, we want to know the implications for our money. We don't want to sort of wait and see how it will unravel, what kind of patchwork solutions are found. And on something as basic as deposit insurance, you need some homework done, because how many banks exist? What is their financial condition is all known to the RBI. Everyone submits annual reports. So why can't you do an actuarial calculation and tell us that this is what the deposit insurance will increase to, this is the amount of premium that will be collected. It's like I told you, it's collected on 100% of deposits. The All India Bank Employees Association has already objected to it. Not that the government is going to listen to them, but they've said, why will you collect on all the deposits? And why will you collect from us public sector banks in the first place? Because we are never going to fail. Okay? So you should, in fact, the government actually should not be collecting money from them because they're not going to fail. And this is a double whammy. The Deposit Insurance Corporation is sitting with their money, which goes to cooperative banks, but they don't fail. On the other hand, they actually fail because the exchequer is, putting, like I said, 3 lakh crore in the last 5 years alone. So public money is going all the time to recapitalize these banks, but they don't fail. So there's never a question of paying deposit insurance for them. But this entire mess has been going on from 1961. Nobody has corrected it. Nobody wants to correct it. We didn't mind because it didn't really affect us. But today, we do mind because now you're threatening to convert our deposits into equity. So we need to wake up now, right? So what went on till 1961, we couldn't be bothered about. But today, we have to worry. So where cooperative banks are concerned, one or two good things which are in the pipeline is that the RBI did not have powers, is what this bill says. So there's going to be a separate bill which will make RBI the single point regulator. Like I said, we have to see what happens. They're going to be converted into small finance banks. All this should be done with before this bill is introduced. That's not what is happening. Now, private banks is another area of worry, okay? Because like I said, Yes Bank is a test case. You had serious issues in ICICI Bank. That Chanda Kochar issue is still going on, okay? Two banks that have failed. Do you know the cost of having merged United Western Bank with IDBI Bank? They force merged it. IDBI Bank itself is doddering. It's under prompt corrective action. So IDBI Bank had to be bailed out. So they got Life Insurance Corporation to bail it out by taking 51%. When LIC was going to invest just 9,000 crore, everybody said, why are you, using people's money, which is our money? We buy insurance. That's why LIC exists. You're using it to buy a failing bank. It doesn't make sense. Do you know that LIC has now invested 21,624 crores in this bank? Government of India has also put in money. The total amount put by Government of India and LIC into IDBI Bank is 42,781 crore. Just think of the kind of money we are talking about just on bank bailouts. And they want to stop doing this because they said they don't want to. So they want to take our money by converting it. Now, Yes Bank is in trouble. United Western Bank was a small bank. IDBI also was a relatively small bank. Yes Bank is far bigger. It's the fourth largest private bank. If this bank has to be bailed out, we don't know what the cost of it is going to be. So the reaction to it is silence. Don't say anything. Yes Bank is putting out press releases saying, we firmly assure you that there's nothing wrong. But time after time, they're holding board meetings, people are resigning, people are demanding forensic audit, people are accusing. This is their board directors. This is not people outside, right? And they are not able to raise good quality money because people who are asking assurances from the bank are not getting it in writing. And so they say, we don't know what's going on over there. So that's a test case. I personally feel that with all these holes in the bill, as well as the current situation, if the bill is introduced in the budget session, which a lot of people think will happen, then we are in for another period of panic, because two things that you need to remember is that this resolution authority under the new bill is going to include all the financial regulators. Now, our view in Moneylife is that all the financial regulators have failed to do their job. They have not monitored what mutual fund trustees are doing. They have not looked at what credit rating agencies are doing. RBI has failed in bank supervision. So you bring them in, becoming part of the bureaucracy. So instead of the resolution authority or anybody demanding accountability from the regulators, you will continue to post retired bureaucrats for 3 and 5 years over there, post-retirement. They will have no accountability. You will have another big bureaucracy. And I don't mind what they're doing, but there's a huge cost involved which comes from the Government of India. And this bill is draconian because it for the first time threatens to take our savings. So today we have to speak up and ask what's going on. There's no detailed exercise on insurance, and there is just one throwaway line over there which says that PSB resolution will happen. Now, if you asked me about LIC and I said it's sovereign. So according to me, there's no question of PSB resolution. You will either privatize these banks, or you will shut them down, or you will sell them. What resolution? Does it mean PSBs will fail when they are government organizations? What is the meaning of a sentence like PSB resolution? We don't know. So I think there are lots of holes in this bill. It's as yet a secret. let's just hope that all these questions are asked and answered. So the final question that you would ask is, did they discuss it with anybody? So you want to know who they discussed it? Definitely not with us, the people who are the largest stakeholders. They've not discussed it with bank unions, but they've discussed it with Tribal Affairs Ministry, and they've discussed it with Corporate Affairs, Social Justice and Empowerment. I don't even schedule castes and tribes. Are these people going to talk about deposit insurance in any meaningful way in the discussions? I don't know what these discussions were, but they very smartly say these are the people, not us, who are going to be most affected. So I'm going to end over here. There are details about the bill, but I don't think most of you are going to be involved in what is the resolution authority, how is it going to be funded, what is the structure. I've got a lot of that, but I'm open to Q&A now. Thank you.
Will this new bill that we are talking, will it be at least better than the current situation?
No, in fact, it's dangerous, right? Because the current situation, nobody is talking about converting your deposits into equity forcibly.
So
unless a few things are answered, this part, especially on deposit insurance and the bail-in, that is a big worry for us. The rest of it, how to resolve, how to deal with failures, that may be an okay part. But I think they have to answer this, or they have to keep them separate, or drop the bail-in part at the moment, make sure the resolution works, and then introduce bail-in when you've cleaned up the system.
That means once deposit insurance is in place, everything is okay, according to you.
According to me, deposit insurance is a problem. They need to keep it out at the moment.
I mean, how is the situation more dangerous than it is already? Because in the current situation, you only get 1 lakh. In that, at least, the entire capital goes. I suppose that,
No, there's a huge difference. One is that at the moment, if you keep your money in a public sector bank, you have nothing to worry about because it's considered like a sovereign guarantee. So you don't have to worry about it. We don't know whether that's going to hold true under the new bill because they can't have a bail-in provision only to private banks and cooperative banks. They will have to do something for PSU banks as well. If they create a separate class saying PSU banks will not have bail-in, all of us will put our money only in PSU banks, and then private banks may fail. Why will people want to risk their money in a private bank at all when the 4th largest private bank is in trouble?
So just a supplementary, that means it effectively means that all your life's hard earnings, there is no financial asset in which you can actually put it safely.
So like I said,
put physical assets.
At
like real estate or
I would say there is
very odd because I personally think mutual funds are very dangerous. The equity capital depends entirely on your economic scenario, and so how do you save for your retirement in a secured way? So yes, going forward, if this applies to public sector banks or there are no public sector banks, we are in that situation. It is a worry. And this is no different from the rest of the world because that's what happened in America. People had to sell their houses. People were living in trailers. People who had 4 houses and 4 mortgages were without a house. They were living in trailers. The difference there is that they at least have social security. In India, you pay the highest taxes, but when you're on the road because the government doesn't take care of you. So that makes our situation a little worse. But yeah, that is the scenario today.
This new bill, even without mentioning what will be the increase in the insurance for the deposit limit, the quantum, they have the cheek to say that the regulator can modify the limit. So that's like, even without giving me the comfort of the increased limit, they're asking me for a blank check. कि पहले तुम blank check दे दो कि कुछ भी हम कर सकते हैं.
That is the format in which the what is drafted and is available just now.
So is it not unconstitutional?
Yeah, but you know what happens is that all these things will get challenged afterwards. What they may do is introduce it, they trigger panic. As usual, you know, people will go to court. When bank nationalization happened also, there were 20 to 30 cases or more. They got dismissed over a period of time. So, you know, it will get challenged and they will have to spell a few things out. But my point is that if the government doesn't want panic, they have to say it up front. They have to do an exercise. They have to put the numbers out and then talk about a bill so that they satisfy people that there is nothing to worry about, or how they will handle it, what they will do with cooperative banks. Why threaten to, you know, the bill is called a 2019 bill. We are already in 2020. So first of all, it will have to be called a 2020 bill. They're sitting with it ready from 2019. Because of various other things, they haven't done it. What we hear is that they may introduce it in the budget session. But my point is, as always, as they did with demonetization, as we did with GST, even the good things have to be done properly. You can't do it hastily. And when it affects people's savings, you have to address the part about deposit insurance properly, even though we may support what they're trying to do on financial resolution. And according to me, there is no escape from regulatory accountability. We, the people, have to demand that sometime, how can it be that the RBI is caught napping all the time for 25 years? The minute there is a scam, the RBI begins to inspect, the RBI begins to punish. How can it be? Why is nobody ever accountable in RBI or SEBI for anything else? So you have to ask one question at a time. You already asked four. I think we'll give others a chance.
Yeah, regarding the same deposit insurance, I believe that even now, whatever cooperative banks have been in trouble, the 1 lakh rupees remains on paper, because unless and until there is a liquidation of the bank, there is no question of payout of that 1 lakh. So whether you merge it with someone or you keep it in limbo, as you said, they are on zombie states. If they are in ICU for next 10 years also, the question of claiming that 1 lakh never comes into the picture.
No. See, I'll tell you what happens is the 1 lakh is paid, but it gets paid after 6-7 years. Okay, but there is a bigger problem over there. If you look at the DICGC website, which we really looked at very seriously after PMC Bank, you will see that in the last 3 years, DICGC has actually not paid any money at all. Why did this happen? Because DICGC takes the money that is recovered after liquidation. I mean, that's something I'm working on, and it's an article that I'm going to write. It is quite outrageous because it means that the money that they have collected post liquidation is more than what they paid out at 1 lakh to those. So not everybody needs 1 lakh. In PMC Bank, if you see, the government says we have paid 74% of the people because they had just about 50,000. So with 50,000 and another 50,000 because of medical emergencies and whatever, at up to 1 lakh, it covers 74%. So who's affected? The remaining 25%. Those have really big deposits. They have been, given 1 lakh and said walk away. Then the bank is liquidated. So suppose, for instance, let's suppose it's PMC Bank, okay, as an example. They pay 1,000 crores at 1 lakh each to all the depositors. But on liquidation, they collect 5,000 crore. Do you know that DICGC is pocketing the remaining 4,000? Now, it's another matter that because it takes a long time, the money that they recover is not that much. But ever since DICGC was set up in 1961, they are sitting on premium collected of 91,000 crore, and in all these years, they have barely paid 5,000 crore as deposit insurance. Even in that 5,000 crore, they have recovered money on the liquidation of these banks, and the actual difference is just about 2,300 crore. And I mean, it's an outrageous situation. None of us bothered. I must say, I'm a journalist for 30 years. We have never had to look into it because we've not had bank failures. We have not gone into how DICGC functions. It was not relevant to most of us. DICGC was told that you can't collect the money from the depositor. It has to be paid by the bank. So it was not going out of our pocket. Again, we didn't look at it. Today, when the deposit insurance increases, if you have to pay it on 5 lakh, will banks afford to pay it themselves? Or like everything else, even checkbooks today, they're collecting the money from you. For your SMS, they're collecting the money from you. Who says they're not going to collect the deposit insurance from you? So everybody says, why not make it 100%? Why not make it 15 lakhs? And we've been saying, cool down a bit, because they will collect it from you. If you're going to pay it, you might as well, insure your deposits directly.
That was what I was coming to, that whether increasing it to 15 lakhs or 5 lakhs would anyway make a difference unless and until the bank is liquidated, if you're not going to get it. How would increasing it anyway matter? That's what I was...
No, so you're getting it. Okay, so you're getting it, but let's see what happens in future. You can, but it's huge price to pay. And till now, the money was paid by the banks. So there'll be a big cost to it. It won't be small.
But at this time, that 100% money will be intact. In this case,
I
going to get the 1 lakh rupees.
See, I don't even know whether any insurance company is actually going to offer you that insurance, because then it's the responsibility of the insurance company to know whether the bank is working well or not. Because on what basis are they going to give you that insurance?
Right. So, looking at this situation from the other side, as a salaried person, if somebody is losing a job and he's got loan, he has to pay EMI, there are no reliefs. If I'm missing out my EMI,
exactly,
I would be getting all collection calls, there will be check bounce cases. So there's no relief for me.
Yes. That is the situation. And let me tell you, our memorandum about PMC Bank also to the RBI governor has said exactly this. So we pointed out to him, and do you know, till now the RBI has kept its mouth shut on it without even going public. We said, what about companies which had deducted TDS and they were supposed to make that payment? So 23rd September is when they suddenly froze everything in PMC Bank. 30th September is when a lot of people would have paid their TDS. They would have deducted it from people, they would have to pay. GST payments were due and on that 30th September. We don't know what's happened to those people. Many of them have rushed off to court, but wasn't it the job of the RBI, the Finance Ministry, to offer some reliefs to these people? And it can't be on a case-by-case basis. There has to be a blanket, public statement saying, we have put it under this kind of strict moratorium, but this will happen. What happens to people who had letters of credit and they became due? We have been asking, when we were working on this draft for a court petition, we were saying, do we know what happens? Are they being honored? We don't know. Then people who had fixed deposits, they were just rolling them over. What is the meaning of that rollover? You have a notional interest. It's over there. All they're saying is, if the bank revives, we even suggested get somebody. We talked to a lot of people in industry. So there is all this talk about HDIL's assets being sold. So we spoke to somebody really senior in the real estate industry, and we said, how much of HDIL's assets actually can get sold and how much can be collected? He said, not a chance there's a buyer for anything. And this is somebody very respected and very senior. He says, if they have something which is already built up, some foreign PE funds may be interested, but you have numbers. So Enforcement Directorate puts out a number which runs into thousands of crores. Nobody has checked it. They need to put in place a top administrator, not a retired RBI officer, to do this. They have not done it. Because I think, even as depositors, a lot of people seem to think that if we stand and shout slogans, it has an impact. It has no impact. You have to challenge it with logic, with reasons, and probably in a court of law. You have Arvind.
Like this will affect our banking deposits and all. So are people, those who have investments in equity, will be safer, or investment in gold? Because ultimately you have to bring your money to the bank only. if I sell my equity, ultimately to encash it, I have to bring my money to the bank only.
Exactly.
So whether it is safe or not, again, it will also come under this.
I have no answers
about this.
So some people are buying more gold because they say that's their thing for the rainy day. But gold prices also, as you know, fluctuate. Okay.
But this you have you are allowed to accumulate some amount of gold. What is the limit?
Yeah. So every few days we hear that this government is going to have limits on how much gold you can have. So we don't know. And you know, this whole sense of unease that is happening today is because of this. All the uncertainties everywhere and multiple. So if you say keep gold, we don't know whether they'll bring a demonetization kind of ceiling on gold. That rumor has been going on for a long time. So property, you know how it fluctuates. Look at the state of real estate just now. So people are seriously worried, like that lady said. We don't even have social security. And especially what is more worrying is the stress is the highest in the middle class and above, because we really work hard. All of us pay the highest tax. We hope to live on our savings. And if there's this whole element of uncertainty about everything to do with our savings, then life is difficult. And we don't have government pensions. Most of us in the private sector don't have the luxury of, you know, government pensions which are, linked to inflation.
Any other progressive country has this kind of horrendous law?
Everybody, the G20 nations have introduced it, okay? So they have bail-in provisions. But the big difference is this. One is their per capita income is different. The amount of facilities that they get. So suppose you compare yourself with the Scandinavian countries, they get high quality healthcare and education free. With Canada, Australia, New Zealand, you don't have to worry about, what happens if I fall ill or what happens about educating my kid. These are worries that are peculiar to India. So some of the countries have it. Now, the beauty is that, do you know that only one country has actually used bail-in? And this is because this country had a lot of Russian money, like a tax haven, and they wanted to confiscate those deposits and use it to recapitalize banks. So other countries which have it in their law have not used it because they know that it causes a lot of unrest all over. So we feel that it has not been used by all countries except that one which had Russian deposits, which they were happy to confiscate. Why should India even consider it, and why should they bring it back when you don't have the safety mechanisms for its citizens? Because this is the worry, that we don't have social security. Healthcare costs are going through the roof. We continue to pay taxes. I mean, if you're living on your bank savings also, it's all taxable. So why do you need to bring this in at all is something we don't understand. Just because you made a commitment to G20, why can't you tell them that this doesn't apply to India?
In the other countries, the limits on the deposit is also very high.
Can you wait for the mic? The recording.
G20 has not made it compulsory. It is not compulsory international law.
They've signed a treaty and they've made a commitment. They have to go back.
Commitment is different and make it legal is different. You see, this is legal looting.
Now you'll have to tell that to the Prime Minister.
It's better to shift to Delhi at least. You get free medical.
Under Kejriwal.
Protected.
2 points. The word modify in the powers that may be vested with the RA is tricky because initially the insurance cover may be increased, then there is every possibility it will be decreased. That is one thing. Secondly, every time we talk about deposit insurance premium, it is always collected based on the age and general health of the insurer. So what about the health of the banks? Whether it should differ from bank to bank?
That's why they're saying that they're going to introduce risk-based insurance. So cooperative banks which are risky will have to pay higher premium. So don't they need to do a calculation depending on the performance? So you have Maharashtra State Cooperative Bank, which is supposed to be a 25,000 crore scam already. It continues to function. There's no moratorium. What is the premium they'll pay? I mean, isn't this something you need to know before a law is introduced? Done?
Any one last question that we can have?
See the other side of the story. Deposit insurance we are worried about because it's our money. But the same bank, madam, these banks from last few years, they have put in, government has put in some 3 lakh crore. And the market cap of these banks are today much less. How long they will keep on pumping? Because that is the same thing. My money either going through my bank deposit or going through my tax. The same thing. But we are more worried about the deposit insurance of 1 lakh. But we are not worried because we are not correcting. Ultimately, the cause is these banks are not performing. They are not efficient.
So we are not in favor of public sector banks continuing. One of the things that we say at Moneylife all the time is regulatory accountability. Why is it that they get away? Because they loot. Now you thought that private banks were better, but the loot is exactly the same in private banks as well. What is it that we are seeing with the Chanda Kochhar case? And in fact, the private banks lead it. The amount they give is smaller. They rope in a consortium the public sector banks. So a private sector bank will give 200 crores. The public sector bank gives 2,000 crore or more, and a bunch of them. So we have to end this loot. That loot can't stop unless there's regulatory accountability. I don't see any sign of regulatory accountability in this system. If there was, you would not have Yes Bank in trouble. Is there any talk about doing anything to Rana Kapoor? He ran the bank down, right? Ravi Patsarthi of ILFS has not even got a technical arrest. They say he's suffering from cancer, but you can at least do a technical arrest, at least to say what you think. 4 others are in jail. Same thing with Rana Kapoor. What is the action?
Well, that's true.
And yet Macquarie and Bloomberg will say, take it over and put it in SBI. Look at the costs that we are paying to IDBI Bank. Why is it alive? But it's one thing to say end public sector banks. Of course we are worried about the price, but we are at least saying that, your hard-earned savings, which you need in your old age, it's not the best solution. So we never talk about PSU banks without saying key is regulatory accountability. Until a few heads roll in SEBI, in RBI, in IRDA, nothing's going to change. And until you keep putting IAS officers who are going to retire as secretaries and put them there for another 3 years, why do they care? They are sitting on a government pension. Their houses are built. They have no social security issue that the rest of us worry about. It's only we private sector people who are affected, and we don't care. How many people want to come together to fight? How many people want to come together even to file a case? And we are the largest people. No government servant is affected. They don't care. These kind of bad laws happen because government employees are not affected. They are on a pension. And I keep saying they are on an inflation-linked pension. It's only we who are affected. And it's time we are much more angry than we are today. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.